feet and a light unto my path. Unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. My path.
Welcome to SearchLight, a survey through Scripture with Pastor Jon Courson. It is our desire to bring you a systematic study of the entire Bible, chapter by chapter, book by book.
Chapter 11, halfway through the tribulation, verse 1. There was given me, John is speaking, a reed like a rod. The angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. Now keep in mind, where are we chronologically? We are in the middle of the what? The tribulation. And John is told to measure the temple, which presupposes that there is going to be a temple built in Jerusalem, and it's going to be functioning at this point. Now, for you who study the Bible, you know that the temple plays a key role throughout the Scriptures. There are several temples that you need to be aware of. The first temple was built by Solomon. Solomon builds this glorious temple. And the temple was built around 1050 BC. They're in Jerusalem. They're on Mount Moriah. But then the Babylonians came down from the north and they invaded the land in 605 BC, 400 plus years later. They made actually 3 invasions into Israel. And on the third invasion, 586 BC, the Babylonians destroyed the city of Jerusalem. And they destroyed the temple, this glorious temple. The people were carried away, the Jews were carried away into captivity for 70 years in Babylon. But even as the prophets declared, after 70 years, they were set free. They were released to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their city, rebuild the temple. The temple was then rebuilt. Around 536 BC, and that is Ezra and Zerubbabel and Joshua. Well, then came a third temple. Now, this is a little controversial because not all scholars or commentators will refer to this one as the third temple, because the third temple, that many call it, was not really a new temple, but it was an expanded facility. In the year 20 BC, 20 years before Christ, King Herod, wanting to obtain the favor of the Jewish people, he enlarged and remodeled and expanded greatly the temple. So some commentators and historians call that the third temple. But that temple was destroyed. Can anybody recall what year that temple that was remodeled and renovated by Herod was destroyed? Excellente. That's impressive. 70 AD. Around 40 years after Jesus died, his prophecy came to pass. Jesus said, you see this temple? Not one of these stones, these massive stones, 100 feet by 40 feet, weighing 100 tons. These massive stones. Not one stone was left upon another, because Titus Vespasian, the Roman general, came and sacked the city in the year AD 70. And one of his men, against his orders, threw a torch into the temple. And the temple ignited, and it began to go up into flames, which caused the gold to melt. And the gold would run down the walls and go into the cracks of these massive stones. And the soldiers, Titus couldn't control them. They began to just knock over these stones and pull down the massive walls to get to the gold that was flowing between the cracks of these massive stones. And indeed, Jesus' prophecy that was given 30 years earlier, when he said not one of these stones is going to stand upon another, came to pass in the year AD 70. So the temple was destroyed. And now if you go to Jerusalem, you can go to the Temple Mount, the place where the temple once stood, Solomon's temple, and then the second temple, and then Herod's renovated temple. But now you'll not see a temple. But the temple is going to be rebuilt, the fourth temple. It's called the Tribulation Temple. It's going to be, because you see in chapter 11, there is a reference to the temple. John is told to measure it. Jesus also talked about this fourth temple in Matthew 24, when he said, in the last days before my second coming, there's going to happen, something is going to happen called the abomination of desolation, spoken earlier by the prophet Daniel, Jesus said. And what is the abomination of desolation? It's when the Antichrist goes into the temple in the middle of the tribulation and demands to be worshipped. Matthew 24, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Revelation chapter 11. There's 3 passages for you that all talk about this temple that will be built. On the Temple Mount, in Jerusalem, and it will be done for certain during the tribulation period. So, John, are you saying that we're going to see the temple rebuilt before the rapture, before the Lord catches us up and takes us to heaven? Not probably. Now, if you go to Jerusalem with us, we'll take you to the Institute of Temple Treasures, and you will see the preparations that are being made even now. But I do not believe that we are going to see the building of the temple. That will happen immediately after the rapture. Why do I say that? Because if you know about Jerusalem, if you're reading your newspapers, you know there's a small problem with building the temple, even though the Orthodox Jewish community wants to see the temple built badly. Without the temple, they know the Orthodox Jewish community understands, without the shedding of blood, there is no what? Remission of sin. And since they do not believe, the Orthodox Jewish community, that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah who died for their sins, they are still looking for the coming of Messiah. They don't recognize what Jesus did. Consequently, they know they still must have sacrifices if their sin is truly going to be forgiven. To sacrifice means there's got to be a temple. The Jewish Orthodox community is in a quandary. They know they've got to build the temple. But there's a small problem on the Temple Mount, where the temple once stood, 35-acre platform there in the old city, the old section of Jerusalem. In the 600s, the late 600s, on this flat Temple Mount, a man named Omer came into the area and built a mosque. It's called the Mosque of Omer, more commonly called the Dome of the Rock. Have you seen pictures of that? It's a massive, massive mosque over this rock that they claim was the rock that sat in the Holy of Holies in the Jewish temple. If the Jews, if they say, well, let's just kind of blow that thing up, and then we can build our temple, because it's got to be built on the same spot that the first temple and the second temple were built on. If they blow it up, they're going to be in big trouble. We're not talking Palestinians throwing rocks or burning tires. We're talking 1 billion Muslims invading Israel immediately. It would be a bloodbath. It would be suicidal. They know that. So you have a problem. What's going to happen to the mosque, the Dome of the Rock Mosque, the Mosque of Omar? Well, this is where the plot thickens. This is where chapter 11 kicks in. This is what's so intriguing. 20 years ago, a brilliant man who is a physicist at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and a crack archaeologist by the name of Dr. Asher Kaufman was spending his time researching this whole Temple Mount area. He spent 16 years, and he came to some remarkable conclusions that were written initially in a landmark article in Biblical Archaeological Review, BAR, magazine, the March-April edition of 1983. But Kaufman said this. He declared, it's been assumed that the Mosque of Omar, the Dome of the Rock Mosque, is sitting on the old Holy of Holies site. But Kaufman, who is not a Christian, he's not even an Orthodox Jew. He is simply a Jewish archaeologist, physicist, and scholar, says it's 100 meters north of the Dome of the Rock Mosque. And so you go 100 meters north, and there you find something on this massive Temple Mount platform, just a big, massive, open spot. You find something. The original flat piece of bedrock. And Kaufman says the Ark of the Covenant, the box that sits in the Holy of Holies, it had to be on this rock. It's flat. It's original. And that's undeniable. And he says the reason is, he says because the Mishnah, which is the Jewish oral traditions from antiquity, says that when the priest stood in the Holy of Holies, one day each year, the day of what? Yom Kippur, he could look through the veil, if the veil was open, through the opening door into the temple, and he could see then directly in front of him, looking out from the temple, he could see the eastern gate. And then right above the eastern gate is Mount Scopus. And it's a straight line from Mount Scopus down to the eastern gate, through the temple to the Holy of Holies. Now you say, well, wait a minute, the eastern gate, was that really the same place the eastern gate was located in Jesus' time when the temple was standing? Yes. In 1970, a secret excavation was done where they had this opportunity to go beneath the eastern gate, and they found the original eastern gate from Christ's time, and it's directly underneath the present eastern gate that you see in all those pictures of Jerusalem, the gate that's sealed up. The original eastern gate from Jesus' day is directly, exactly below it. There's no question or controversy about that whatsoever. So, the eastern gate lined up. Now, you go to the Dome of the Rock, and it doesn't line up. The Dome of the Rock is 100 meters south. And so, according to Kaufman, and most scholars agree with him, not all, flat stone that's about this long or so, that's the place of the Holy of Holies. And then, if that be, you could build the temple, and the Dome of the Rock Mosque could still remain standing, but it would be in the outer courtyard of the temple. Now, check this out. Look at verse 2. Measure the temple, but, the angel says, the court that is outside the temple leave out, don't measure it, for it is given to the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. Don't measure the outer court. That's Gentile or non-Jewish territory. Amazing. So what are you saying? I am saying that you can build a temple, and according to Revelation 11:2, the courtyard remains under Gentile territory or Gentile control, and you don't have a problem. Well, yes, you do, John, you say. You're dreaming. The people in Islam are not going to allow a temple to be built on the mount right there next to the Dome of the Rock. See, in order to understand current events, please understand this. An amazing thing happened in the Six-Day War of 1967. The Jews, the Israelis, launched a preemptive strike against the Arabs. And they recaptured the city of Jerusalem. But something happened which baffles Jewish historians to this day. The Israeli forces come in. They have captured the old city. They have reunited Jerusalem. But then Moshe Dayan does something which is inexplicable and still to this day very controversial. After capturing Jerusalem, reuniting Jerusalem under Israeli control, he that day says to the Caliph, the head honcho of Islam, you guys, we will allow you to retain control of the Temple Mount. Why did he do that? The Temple Mount is where all the problems are today, folks. Moshe Dayan in that day could have easily booted off the Islamic leaders and said, hey, sorry, it's war, you lost, too bad. But he didn't. In some kind of a gesture which he himself has never fully explained, he says, okay, you guys here's your mosque, you can retain control of this 35-acre parcel, the Temple Mount. And they retain control of that today, you see. So why did Moshe Dayan do that? Because God was at work. This is where the Antichrist comes in. This is what's going to happen. In Daniel, it says this Antichrist character is going to make a covenant, a 7-year peace treaty that's going to bring the world together and solve the problem of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, it's a stumbling stone, as Zechariah said it would be. It's a problem. Antichrist will come in. And in the 42nd chapter of Ezekiel, it says that there shall be erected a wall in this temple area between the holy place and the profane. Antichrist, with his amazing political skill and savvy, is going to evidently bring a peace treaty into the Middle East that will say, listen, you can build your temple, and Arabs, be happy. You can keep the Dome of the Rock here. We're going to put a wall. Build your temple. You won't have the courtyard Jews. That'll be here in the Dome of the Rocks arena. And somehow, with skill that's beyond our understanding, both Arabs and Jews are going to buy it. They're going to say, okay, sounds good. And the world is going to say, ho, 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 this guy, Antichrist, he can solve the world's problems. Clinton can't. Netanyahu is unable to. Arafat? No one can figure out how to solve this Jerusalem dilemma, but Antichrist will. And he will come and make his case so persuasively, the world shall say, wow, you are a miracle worker. The temple shall then be rebuilt. Then, halfway through the tribulation, Antichrist will show his true colors. He will go into that tribulation temple, demand to be worshipped, and the Jews will say, oy vey, this is not what we thought. This guy is not who we thought he was. This is wrong. Demanding to be worshipped in the temple. But it's too late, for he has already gained control of the reins of power. By the way, for you note takers, you guys that are tracking with me through this, there will be a 5th temple built after the tribulation temple. The tribulation temple will be destroyed when Christ comes back. It's been defiled. It will be destroyed by Jesus Christ. And the final 5th temple that's described in Ezekiel, the end of Ezekiel, shall be constructed. It's the millennial temple. It's huge. And that is the temple that Jesus will oversee and be involved in there in Jerusalem.
If you would like to have this complete teaching, you may order one from our website at joncourson.com. You may also call us toll-free at 888-544-4858 and ask for the teaching from today's date. Again, that ordering number is 888-544-4858. You will also find on our website a variety of Pastor Jon's books, teaching packets, MP3 CDs, and other Bible study resources. Again, the address of the website is joncourson.com. SearchLight is a listener-supported ministry. We appreciate your prayers and support. May the Lord richly bless you.